Virtual Physiatry Mentors. I'm Dr. Sheena Bhuva.
I'm Dr. Benecia Williams.
And together we are Sheena. Screenshot. Okay. And so today we have an exciting guest, Dr. Annette Grotheer. She is a PGY1 doing her intern year in Florida right now, and will be starting her PM&R residency in next year. Not next year, this year. No, yeah, next year, 2021.
2020 needs to end first.
Yes. Oh my God. And excited to have her. We posted that she has started her own nonprofit already, so very impressive, as well as been on the Forbes 30 under 30. So we'll be going into some of that as well. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yay, we're so excited to have you. So I met Annie probably about a year ago on Instagram. We had exchanged just some kind words about like, yay, Black women in PM&R. So we were just so excited to connect. And then we got to sit on a panel for SNMA a few months ago. So I was so impressed by her. I was like, she'll be a great guest. And I'm excited just to learn more about you and your journey into PM&R. So tell us a little bit more about yourself, Annie, where you're from, and a little bit more about your training.
Yeah, so I guess I was born abroad and I grew up in Colorado. So I'm kind of like a hippie, outdoorsy mountain girl, but now I live in Florida, the furthest I could get from mountains possible. So this is like the time of year I get super homesick for like change of leaf colors and hikes in the fall and all that stuff. I went to college there at University of Colorado Boulder. I was a psych major, so I like didn't really have medicine on my radar until after I graduated. So I kind of just did the college experience, lived it up a little bit. And then I ended up doing like a research fellowship in Boston. I did a lot of like community-based programming, working a lot with HIV research. So I think that's kind of like where I developed my love for like community-based programs and kind of just working directly with people in like the real life settings where they live and work, and looking at, I guess, those like psychosocial determinants of health and all of that shebang. And then I kind of realized, a really cool way to have an impact on that is through medicine, through going to medical school, going through the whole process, jumping through all the hoops. So I ended up going back and doing a post-bac. So I'm what you would call a non-traditional student. I took 4 years off between undergrad and going to medical school. Yes. I don't regret it at all.
4 years off and a post-bac.
Yeah, exactly. I had time to like travel, do all the fun stuff, and then get down to business in medical school. And then I ended up applying all over, but I ended up going to a University of Miami because they have this really cool public health program. You can do your MD and your MPH in 4 years. Normally it's a 5-year program. And so I basically got a free master's, and it's a really cool experience, like being in Miami. You get all this exposure to like really cool languages and cultural experiences and all of that. And then, that program really drew me to Miami. So I've been there since I started school. I graduated this May with a virtual graduation. So that was super interesting. And then I ended up staying for my transitional year at Aventura Hospital. So I've been there for a few months, finally starting to get the hang of things. But that's kind of my journey into medicine and a little bit of my background.
Great. Very good.
And you'll be doing residency at Northwestern, right?
Yes. So I need to get a
next
coach.
year.
That
I
is
got rid
a
of all my
change.
stuff when I moved to Miami.
You're like, I don't need this coat anymore. Yeah.
I'm never gonna wear a sweater again.
Florida is a nice place to do your internship. We'll talk about her here, I think, later on in one of our questions. But my friend Kristen, she did her intern year in Florida as well. And I remember going down there in December. I'm like, this is amazing. I'm like, you live on the beach.
Yeah.
I live it up.
I don't mind it.
Yeah, live it up.
All right, Annette. So we always ask our guests, when did they hear about PM&R, when they decide to apply? And Benecia was telling me that you heard about it a little bit later in medical school. So can you tell us a little bit about your exposure and kind of why did you go into PM&R and when did you hear about it?
Yeah, so I actually, in my gap year, I told you I was a non-traditional student, just in my gap year, I worked at this ortho practice that had a physiatrist. So I would like scribe for him, but I didn't really know exactly all that he could do because he was like in a multidisciplinary practice, and they basically sent him all the people who needed like pain management and he would write scripts for them. So that was kind of my exposure and understanding of the field. So I got exposed to it early, but I didn't quite realize all that you can do with the field until quite later. I did shadow when I was in med school a couple of times, like my first year, just to see what it was like. And I just remember all the people I shadowed were super nice. They always invited me to come back. I always had a really good time. But I didn't really like put it on my list of things that I was interested in until I started doing more research into like, what are the specialties where I can be, more hands-on and procedural, but like not live the surgery lifestyle. Because I just had this moment in med school where we did 3 months of surgery. So I had 3 months of surgery, super gung-ho about it. I was like, oh, I'm going to be a surgeon. This is great. And then I went directly from that rotation to like an outpatient internal medicine. And I realized like how miserable everyone really was, because like when you're in the depths of it, you don't really realize. I was like, oh, this is so cool. Everyone's so smart. And, I have a lot of respect for the field. But then I realized, that wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted for myself. So I kind of did some research at that point, and it was a little bit of a switch in my thinking as far as what I wanted for my career. Which I think happens to a lot of people, especially as they start going into their clinical rotations and thinking about, what are the next 10 years going to look like? Am I only going to see the operating room? Am I going to see sunlight? Like those important things to think about as well. So that was kind of my early exposure. But like you mentioned, I didn't really aggressively pursue PM&R until into my third year. I started doing a lot more shadowing. I started going researching conferences I could go to, I did a ton of informational interviews, which I think will be like super helpful for people now as well. I just like called anyone who I saw at a program that did something like interesting in PM&R and just set up a meeting with them, asked them a bunch of random questions. And every single person I talked to would tell me something new about the field, which was the thing that like really excited me. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you could do that. And you can do this, and you can do like all of the MPH stuff, like my public health fits in, like everything that I kind of wanted to do was available within the field. And every time I talked to someone, I was, confirmed of that. So I think that was kind of what sold me on pursuing PM&R.
No, yeah, it's such a diverse field, and hopefully people will realize that by our channel, because every week we try to feature something different about PM&R. It really is awesome.
And that's great that you were proactive about doing that, because I mean, like you said, we are nice people. We love to talk about our field. And so we'll be happy to, I'm sure a majority of PM&R doctors out there would be happy to kind of tell anyone what we do and kind of provide a little bit of mentorship with that. So
absolutely. And people will hit us up, but then I usually direct them to our page. I'm like, listen, there is an hour-long video already discussed on your question. But so hopefully it will just be a good resource ultimately.
I mean, I'm sad about for people is I don't know if they're allowed to do away rotations, but that was one of the ways that I learned a lot about the field, going to different programs and seeing like, oh, they have different focuses. They have different people with different expertise. And it is like, I think because it is like a little bit newer, there are people who are just like experts in the field. They're like the only one who's really doing it. There's like 3 people. So if you happen to be at an institution where that person is, you get to learn from their experience, which is really cool. I think it's, we still have that really intimate relationship with our mentors and with our professors, because there are some people who are just like the sole expert in this one.
Literally in that one thing. Yeah. Now it is sad that people can't do their away rotations. Like that breaks my heart for the medical students right now, because it's like dating. Like you want to go, you're like, oh, let me see how this is gonna work out. Like this is a good fit. And you're like, this isn't gonna work out for me.
It's like dating multiple people.
Right, it is. It's speed dating. It's like speed dating, right? You're like, oh, let me look at my calendar. I'm flying here for this date and then here. But hopefully with like we're hoping that people have at least a better sense of programs with like our takeovers, how you brought up, and then I know some people are able to call in and do their didactics, and there's some virtual rotations. And I know there's a couple programs that are allowing some students to come in if it's like at their home institute, if you're at a program that, so but yeah, it's different. So yeah, you're in the thick of it right now with your intern year. You're starting to feel like, I know the first 2 months are such a steep learning curve. I remember literally like my first night on call, July, getting a call for Tylenol, and I'm like, oh my God, can they get Tylenol? I'm like, can they have Tylenol? Is that okay?
Checking the liver enzymes, all that.
You're like, let me see. I don't know. You're like, they can have Tylenol. It's okay. And then the first time people actually call you doctor, you get that first page, you're like, oh my God, like this is real. So yes, how's it going? Has things settled down for you? Tell us a little bit more about you're doing a traditional year, which is great.
Yeah, so far, I mean, I feel like I'm starting to have like a lot more ownership of my patients, which feels good. Initially I was just like, tell me what to do, I'll do it. Like, I don't know how to do it, but like, we'll figure it out. So, I mean, it is really exciting to feel like, oh, hey, I like see this patient, I can take them from the beginning to the end. I know how to do pretty much everything at each step. Obviously I need a lot of help, but at least I know like how it's supposed to look and can kind of like direct the flow a little bit more. So I feel like that's a really cool place to be, but it's also one of those places where like you need to have a lot of like awareness that you don't know anything, because you start to feel a little bit comfortable and like making decisions. So I think that's where I am, and it's a good thing. I definitely thought I would be able to study way more, but I guess that's a struggle. It's just like making the time for everything.
And you learn so much while you're on, service. So that's
yeah, that's so true.
Every day, yes.
So I guess like the
and
time
trust your gut.
Has been like a struggle, but
yeah. One of the biggest like things I learned from interns, like trust your gut. Like if you feel like something's not right with your patient, like it's probably something is not right. I will never forget a patient that I had, and she came in and she was in the ER for DKA. She was Spanish speaking, so I had brought an interpreter with me, and the interpreter's like, she's slurring her words kind of bad, like I can't understand her that much, but by that time I'm doing the admission for DKA, so I'm like, that's weird. So I called my upper level, I'm like, she's slurring, it doesn't seem right. So she's like, well, let's just get a stat CT head just to make sure, get a stat CT head. And I remember opening up the CT and I'm like, I can't read a CT head at this point. And I'm like, well, that looks weird. That whole left cerebellum on the side is just a little bit darker than the other. She had stroked out her entire right cerebellum, and she ended up herniating her brain and dying. But like, it brings chills to my body. And my upper light was like, that was such a good catch. She's like, you knew something wasn't right, and I pursued it. So that is my biggest advice. If you know something's not right, pursue it. Because you just never know.
Building that intuition and like, just, that feeling, you're like, okay, let's look at this more. And sometimes it's wrong. Like, that's the thing that's been going on where I'm like, oh yeah, like it was nothing. And my attending's like, yeah, that was
really yeah, but you never know. And that's okay. Like, that's part of learning. Exactly.
There's still zebras out there. You never know when you'll see a zebra. So
yeah,
you never, and PM&R, you will find the zebras will come to you. Rehab, they will.
Yep.
No, very fun.
All right. So we mentioned, next year you'll be starting your PM&R residency over at Northwestern. We had a few of our guests that have graduated from there. It's a great program, including one of our good friends, Dr. Kristen Taylor. She was on. She's pediatric rehab. So check out that episode if you guys are interested. And so when you were interviewing last year, what were some of the qualities that you were looking for in programs? And what advice would you give to medical students that are currently, that were in your situation, that are currently in your situation, applying to residency programs now? Kind of what should they be looking for?
That CT head for
yeah, I'm slurring my words.
Like, is she okay? We should look into it. So yeah, that was definitely, I don't think I had like as good of an idea of what I was looking for in a program until I went to my first interview. But I did have a list of questions that I asked everyone. I think they're like pretty standard questions as far as like asking the residents what their experience has been like, if they would change anything about the program, like what they thought the strengths were, the weaknesses were. So kind of just trying to get a pulse on the program from the people who are in it, and then kind of asking the same questions to the program directors and the administration to see if there was like a good correlation. Like if they were saying something entirely different than what the residents were saying, there clearly is not very good communication. And you want to go to a program where your administration knows what's going on and is working on it actively and is honest about, the sorts of things that they need to work on. I definitely noticed, like, when I was interviewing, that there are like more community-based and more academic programs, if that makes sense. So some of the programs I went to, they were like, okay, we're really interested in getting you out into the community, into like more of a private practice setting. So, their focus was so much different. Like, I came in with a ton of research interest and background, especially with the NPH, and I would be talking to some of these programs about, hey, like, I would love to, start a program, or I would love to like be involved with minority community. Like, what are you guys doing? And there was like a very distinct difference between those more academic programs and the more community-based programs as far as what they provided already for your opportunities to get involved. So I think that's the one thing to focus on. I think, I had really good impressions of both types of programs. I just was like speaking a little bit of a different language, because I was like, hey, like, what are the programs you have set up and all of this stuff, like community outreach. And, they just didn't have as much of a robust interest in that at some of the programs I went to. So that was a big distinction for me. I really wanted to go to a program that focused on minority health, had some in their radar, at least, like having these discussions about how they could improve their community's health, like outreach to help the people that they're supposed to be helping, right? Like, obviously the hospital setting is one way to help people, but I think, I wanted to go to a program that had this kind of like conscience. They have a lot of resources and they shouldn't be isolated to just people who come to the hospital. So that was another thing I really look for, is how much they were doing outreach in their communities. And then I really wanted to go to a program that prioritized innovation. That was like a huge thing. And I really feel like that was the one thing that helped me to like weed out programs, because all the places I went, people were really nice, the facilities were good. The type of experiences you have are going to be pretty similar across the board from what I could hear. It all kind of blends together, because in the end, I think a lot of the experiences you have are pretty similar. But I really felt like there are a couple of programs that stood out to me as far as them looking for people who are innovators, first of all, them really exemplifying that, giving opportunities for their residents to be doing research, to be starting their own programs, to be, exploring the cutting edge, or like pushing the boundaries of what physiatry is. And so those are the programs that really got me excited. So I think for, I guess, advice as far as like questions to ask, is do as much reflection as you can about what you feel like you want to do in this field. And that's going to be hard to answer, to be honest. And I kind of went into the experience knowing that this would change as I learned more, and it'll probably change during my training. So I'm not like dead set on anything, but the global picture, like I want to work with minorities, I want to work with communities. And I want to have opportunities to like integrate technology into what I'm doing, and then kind of like push the boundaries, like kind of what you guys are doing, integrating media, like how can we impact this field and kind of progress it. So like with that in mind, I was asking those sorts of questions like, oh, how do you guys approach this? Do you guys have opportunities for additional training? Like, what do you guys offer outside of just my rotations? So I think trying to meditate on that as much as you can, like what you liked the best in med school, will that translate into the program that you're going into? That will be super helpful as far as like fit of programs. And then, like I was mentioning before, just talking to residents, what their experience has been like. Obviously, you wanna hear the good and the bad. So I guess, paying attention to any like awkward pauses when you're like, oh, so how's it going? And they're like, good. Like some of it will be very subtle, but, trying to pay attention as much as you can about that. I guess over the phone, it's a little bit harder, but, I think you'll still get a pretty good sense of how people feel about the program through like interviews on the phone or discussions over Zoom or whatever people end up doing. I'm trying to think of anything else that I look for. I mean, I tried to find programs that had obviously the potential subspecialties I'm interested in on site. So I think if you have an idea, it's good to to ask about that and how often they bring people from their own program into those fellowships. I guess if they don't have that fellowship that you're interested in, what is their alumni network like? How do they support and advocate for their residents to get those jobs? Because that's like, we're trying to get a job now. Like, I want to, I'm looking for attending life already.
No, it's smart. Sheena just posted that on Friday. Like, this is the time their PGY4s should be like, Sheena and I both had our contracts. We were like, we're ready to sign by December 1st. That was our goal. It's like, we knew by our PGY4 year or the end of our fellowship, halfway through our fellowship year, that our jobs wanted to be nailed down. So that second 6 months, we're doing our credentialing, getting ready to move and everything else. So no, it's very important to look ahead.
Yep.
So that kind of brings me to my next question. I titled this Making the Most Out of Medicine, because I feel like you've done so much already, which I think is amazing, and you're just getting started. I really look forward to seeing what you bring out of the field. So tell us more about your nonprofit that you started, the Doc Shop, and then also being one of the 30 under 30 for Forbes.
Yeah. So I ended up starting a nonprofit during medical school. It's called the Shop Docs, and we do basically preventative medicine in the barbershop. So it's a lot of education, outreach in the community, just trying to start these conversations surrounding health and looking at ways that we can prevent some of these like terrible, honestly, really terrible outcomes that happen in the minority community, which don't need to happen. So this was actually kind of, I was trying to multitask. Like you're talking about like making the most out of medicine. I was really trying to multitask because for my master's, I had to do a capstone project. I also was interested in being part of SNMA, the Minority Medical Student Association. And somehow I was like, oh, this program fits in all of those categories. Like I can use SNMA to volunteer for this organization. We can have a really positive impact. I think people will really have a good time volunteering. And then I was collecting data for my capstone, which was pretty cool to see. We were trying to see if we're reaching people who don't traditionally access healthcare like the way that we think of, even though free health fairs that we offer, like does a lot of outreach. A lot of people aren't utilizing that because, it's this very specific population that hears about that and has initiative to go, and even thinks that they have a reason to go, you know what I mean? So it was really cool to see that we're reaching these people who don't necessarily access medicine in the traditional way. It kind of just blossomed from there. I think social media helps. I think we just like marketed it really well because this is not a new concept. A lot of people have done barbershop-based programs, but I think we just made it so accessible for people to get involved and kind of, it has a cool, like it sounds cool, right? Like you're in the barbershop doing medicine. Like, I don't know, it has like a certain, sexiness.
No, it's cool. Yeah. Yeah. We did something similar like that with SNMA when I was in medical school. And I just love how you took it above and beyond. No, it's important. It's important work.
Yeah. So it kind of just grew from there. And it's been cool because I think from the beginning, I was thinking about sustainability and like multitasking. That's like the theme of everything. So we kind of just like implemented it in a way that had really good sustainability and it was able to be implemented in different locations. So we're now in like 7 different states. And a lot of students and barbers and community members are reaching out just to ask how they can get involved because I think they relate to the mission, right? And they've been to the barbershop. And so it's something like very human about us providing education in that setting. It's less sterile, we're doctors, but we're also, here in your community, like just talking to you like a normal person. So I think, we're kind of bridging some gaps that currently exist between medical providers, especially in the minority community. So it's pretty cool. It was cool that Forbes recognized the importance of this type of work. And so this past year, I was on the Forbes 30 under 30, barely slid in. So I turned 30 in March. So I know. But it's been pretty cool to hear people's positive response to that. And I think, with everything going on during the pandemic, people saw the importance even more. And that gave us a little bit of momentum, and people, could see, I guess, tangibly what we've been speaking about and what we've been trying to do, what our mission has been. Now more people can see it, unfortunately and fortunately, in a way.
No, I think it's so true. So whenever I have like, Black men are different, you guys. Especially when it comes to like, you have to get there. I'll go in a room, like if one of them has had a stroke and I like a young, I'm like, listen, I said, let me tell you how this is going to go. You have to talk to me like that. I'm talking to you as Benecia right now. What you're about to do is take this medicine because you're so lucky that things aren't worse for you. So you have to get real with them.
That's so true.
All right, so before we went live, I think Benecia and I were kind of talking a little bit about why we had started Virtual Physiatry Mentors, and we had started it because of the pandemic and figured, medical students and residents, they may not have as much exposure to PM&R, and it'd be kind of a fun way to spread the word and kind of have some guests on and just kind of learn from everyone. And it's turned out to be awesome, but it does take a lot of time, and you have a huge Instagram following, 21,000 plus followers. So tell us a little bit about kind of typical week during intern year, and then how do you also keep up with kind of some of the social media and awareness that you do?
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess that she's probably like you, Sheena, and very organized with some spreadsheets. I feel like spreadsheets are going to be involved.
That's how I decided where to go for residency.
I was like, this is why I knew I was going to like you. I said, Annie is going to be a good mix between Sheena and I. Yep, you guys probably had your spreadsheets together.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so my typical day, it depends on what rotation you're on, which I'm sure people can understand. But, getting up at 4:35 and then coming home at like 6, 7. And then I have stopped cooking. I don't know. I just cut out all the things that take extra time that I just are more stress than fun. So I try to limit those things so I have energy to spend on some of my other projects that energize me, get me excited. I think my best time-saving tips are something called Calendly. I don't know if you use it, but it integrates with your calendar, and you can just send people links. And I'm like, okay, set up a meeting with me. This, I already have my time frame set. I don't have to stress about when we going back and forth about when we can meet. It's just so easy. The best thing that's ever happened to my life.
I'm like, I need to take notes right now.
Yeah, how do you spell that?
So basically I have between 8 and 10 o'clock is when I take meetings. When I have a couple of team members who are really helpful, and especially with the shop doc stuff. I do my own social media, and so I use scheduling apps. It's super convenient. So I'll spend an hour, basically just make all my posts for a couple of weeks, and then just let it auto populate.
It just takes you an hour. It just takes an hour to do a couple of weeks.
I'm like, what?
I'm not doing videos and stuff like that. I just do pictures, so I think it takes less time. And having a whole production of videos and informative stuff. My Instagram is just me looking cute. There's not a lot of,
That's how my private Instagram, that's how my, that's my private Instagram. I'm like, Sophie.
I know, some of my captions, I'm so it doesn't take as long as what you guys are doing, for sure. But I do, I try to automate as much as I possibly can. So the calendar app, all my posts are scheduled, I use Hopper HQ, and you can do your captions, all of that. And then I try to consolidate all my shoots.
It's Benecia, we're looking at each other. Sorry.
Changing our life right now. We're okay, I'm literally taking mental notes right now. Okay, perfect. Copper calendar done. This is great.
Oh, it's so nice. And then I use we were talking about. Oh, I try to consolidate all my shoots and stuff like that. So if I need to record content or whatever, or I have brand partnerships, I'll just record everything on like one Saturday, and then the next Saturday, you know what I mean? Like spend a couple of hours because you're already doing it. Like I already put on my makeup. So just get it all done. So I guess it's like a lot of scheduling, trying to be as efficient as possible, and then using as much automation as possible. Because I'll be like, in noon conference, people were like, "Oh, why are you posting this selfie?" I'm like, "No, it's just
scheduled. It was a scheduled thing, right?"
Because I need to pay attention now. Like I can't be on the gram all the time. And I also try to limit like how much time I'm on there. I only do like 20 minutes a day.
Oh, that's so good.
I know.
I would not tell you guys what my screenshot. So Sheena knows this about me. Like I hate doing notes. Like literally, I will be at my desk talking to my partners, and I'm like, let me get on Instagram, and I'm like, damn, I've been on Instagram for 45 minutes. I guess I should write.
Oh my gosh, you need to put a limit on there, because then you feel guilty. You're like, damn, I've been on there another 15 minutes.
I know. I need to.
Sure, there's an app. Yeah.
No, it's not on your phone.
Sure there's an app.
You can do screen time. You can limit any app, because I definitely get distracted. I have to keep my.
I need to. It is a huge distraction. It is. But the crazy thing is, like with the pandemic, I feel like it's forced so many of like programs, just not just PM&R, all residency programs, to have to be social media savvy. Mm-hmm. And like you had said earlier about like being more integrative and pushing the limits, because there's so many programs that were like so anti-social media, but now it's almost a bad thing if you don't have a social media page on programs. I'd be like, I mean, if I was a medical student, I'd be like, I can't learn about your program if you're not on social media. So
yeah. Has anyone asked you to like advise them on how to best reach people? Because you guys have a really great following and have been doing really great work.
No, they haven't, but I know Sheena and I had talked around. We have the person we can get to help with this, Sheena. I'm like, I'm not big into research, but I'm like, I would love to know how social media has influenced this class that's getting ready to match, that's doing their interview and matching, and how much it's influenced their decision on where they're going to residency. I'm like, maybe that's an article or something we can do. That's
super interesting.
Right?
I mean, a lot of people reach out to me through social media asking about PM&R, and I don't post about it a ton, so it's people are like paying attention and like really trying to seek out this information, because there isn't that much. Like I think we were talking about before we went live, like how you really had to dig on the internet. Like I was on Reddit, I was on Student Doctor, I was on there's like Grunt Work, there's like so many sites, and there's like 3 reviews.
It's like this much. Yeah. Yes, we've gotten a lot of feedback with people will just send us thank yous. They're like, thank you so much for, and we're like, because I just feel like we're such a wealth of information, because we were those people that did as much research as possible. So in residency, like after we were doing, when it's time to apply for fellowships, I'm like, people were like, where do I need to go? I'm like, call Sheena at I'm like, and we will break it down for you.
Okay, well, let me write that down. I'll be
Yes, no. Yeah, when you are ready to apply to fellowships, we will tell you the nitty-gritty about all of me. And also because I talk so much, we talk to so many people.
The field is small. Like, it's smaller than we think. Like it's not even 7 degrees of separation. It's like 2 degrees of separation. You can find someone easily that if something you're interested in, just reach out. Yeah.
Because it gets more ambiguous as you go along. That's what I learned in the residency like research process. I was like, because med school, they have all these stats. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna apply here because of this, this, and this.
Right.
That doesn't exist especially for PM&R. So I remember there was one resource that I used a lot. It was like this spreadsheet actually I don't really promote Student Doctor Network, but it was on Student Doctor Network. And that was like the one thing that had the most information.
I've seen that. Yeah. Yep.
So I was like, Sheena, did you post that?
I didn't post it, but I have definitely looked at it, and you know, PM&R scholars, they have a great spreadsheet as well, kind of posting their PowerPoint presentations on all the
that's awesome.
programs, and then they have the links to our IG takeovers on that as well. It's
new though. Good resource. That was like. No.
This is all new for this year. I know it's like you benefit from it. That did not exist.
The internet.
No. Yeah, that all happened this year, this interview season. Yeah, it's pretty neat. And that's the thing, like with these Instagram takeovers, we post all the time, but we've only had like 22 now programs that have kind of reached out and I think it's been great for the ones that have done it. I wish more programs would reach out and do them. So
see, that's what another reason we need to do some kind of scholarly article or poster, because I think that the programs that can't do it, they're probably getting pushback from the older people in the program that are not social media savvy. They still look at it as a bad thing. We had some pushback. We'll talk about it maybe if we can get them.
Yeah, no,
we're trying to get Dr. Hamilton on.
That's a common question. Like, people are curious if they have a social media presence, how that will be received by programs. It will be seen as a negative thing or a positive thing. And like, my advice is always, you want to go somewhere that's going to accept you for who you are. If they're seeing it as a negative thing, you're not going to want to be in that program.
No, that is so true.
That's you don't want to shut doors on yourself because of something like social media.
No, like we had Dr. Monica Gutierrez on. She is the chair of the UT Southwestern program. I'm sorry, UT San Antonio program. And she makes all their, like, we had attendings on after, and she makes them all get social media, because she has such a big social media following with PM&R that she's like, no, this is just the way of the future. And that's how we learn, is the first thing we do is we go to Google and you search and see what pops up. So times are changing.
Right. If anyone out there has any questions, please type them out for us.
Yeah, let us know for sure. So how, if you guys also didn't know, Annie's very fit. How's your workout regimen going with your intern year?
I haven't worked out in like a month.
It's hard. No, the reason I asked, no, I know it's hard. Literally, you guys, I legitimately gained 15 pounds my intern year. And I'm a person that works out 5 to 6 times a week. But during that intern year,
she wakes up at 4:30.
Like, you sacrifice. I woke up at 4:30. Yeah, I wake up at 4:30 every morning, and I work out. Yep, and I still work out like that because I have to look at it like a job. But it is, and your intern year is so hard because you sacrifice so much to sleep. You're like, I just need to sleep. I'm like, I just want to go.
Now I'm on the chill rotation, so I'm like, oh, I'm going for runs in the morning. This is great. Like, I love medicine.
No, yes, and that's the good thing about it. Yes, you hate it. And that's the good thing. Another good thing about PM&R is because the lifestyle, even in residency, you'll be like, I just can't wait to get to PGY2.
Oh my God.
It really is a great lifestyle.
She's like in her PGY2 and she's like complaining. She's on floor. She's like inpatient or something. I forget what rotation.
PGY2 is harder, but once you get past that,
Well, no, she was like, oh, I'm working like 60 hours a week. And I was like,
You're like, I'm on my trauma service right now, so I'm doing 3 24-hour calls. Thank you.
I know.
Right. I was talking to my friend, and he's a surgeon. He was like, I was working like 140, 160 hours a week when he was in his fellowship. I was like, I worked like 35, 40 hours a week.
We are spoiled.
Yeah. I'm like, and I'm like, we were very spoiled, and we moonlighted too, so we got to double our salary.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I did.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll teach you the tricks of the trade when what you got to do.
I know. I don't know if you guys have answered this question before, but I'm like starting to think about next year already. What advice you guys have as far as like preparing now? Because I mean, obviously now I'm starting to think. Get my footing. So thinking about like preparing myself for going to this new institution, which definitely is like a different, like I'm at a HCA community hospital and I'm about to go to this huge academic center. So I'm a little bit nervous about switching it up and being like a transitional year when they have categoricals, stuff like that. I think
people don't realize how much internal medicine is in rehab, especially when you're on inpatient rehab. There's a lot of programs. We were like this we were the internal medicine doctors. Like they rarely came over a list. Like the blood sugars, we literally cannot get under control. The hypertension, we've tried everything, maxing things out. So like learn as much as you can for your internal medicine, because that really bread and butter internal medicine is definitely going to flow over into your inpatient rehab.
That's like one of the things I like about PM&R actually is that you don't, like as a specialty, you can like subspecialize, but like in your training, you don't just ignore all the medicine that you learned in medical school, like all the stuff you did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Still use it.
Yeah, absolutely do. Especially when you're an intern. I mean, especially when you're the on-call resident, like you're going to have patients that are septic in the middle of the night. You're like, okay, give me a gram of zinc, give me a gram of Zocin, go ahead and get chest x-ray. You'll know the workout like the back of your hand. And then, so yeah, know medicine well. And the rehab part is going to come. Like, there's no program that's going to expect you to come in and know rehab as in coming into your PGY too. So if you're at a program, they're going to be open, but they will expect you to know the bread and butter internal medicine, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
While they may not expect you to know everything, obviously, as a PGY too, it's still nice to maybe like on a less intense rotation, kind of just read up a little bit, kind of get one of the, what are those? What's the really good book? Pocketpedia. There's another one also. Like PM&R. I'll have to look it up. I'll post it later. But where it has
3-minute musculoskeletal and peripheral nerve exam.
That one. Oh, it has like a green cover. Green cover. That one's good. But then there's like it's not doesn't go into much depth. It's very like broad, kind of just on spinal cord injury, brain injury. PMR. I don't know. It's not PMR.
It's not the secrets. No. I used the Pocketpedia, was great, but they stopped making that Pocketpedia, the one that we used for some reason. And like, it was really hard to find. I might have it on a different way.
Yeah.
That's how I had it.
I was like, I probably have it.
Oh, here we go. Right. I found it. It's called Physical Medicine and Rehab Q&A Review.
Oh, okay, ready on that.
Check that out.
Oh yeah.
It's got like greenish, yellowish cover, and
I know exactly which one you're talking about now. Yeah, it's good to know, especially if you know, you'll probably find out your schedule probably about April. Usually is when most programs kind of send out. So once you have that, like if you're on spinal cord injury first, which is a good rotation to start first because it really does.
That's what I did.
Mm-hmm. That's what Sheena did, and it really pulls everything together. I would read up on spinal cord injury. Like just the ASIA scale. Like if you have a good idea about what the ASIA scale is, once you pull that together, it will help with your neuro exam. I use it every day. Everything correlates. So yeah, you'll be fine. You'll do great.
Yeah, don't stress. Don't stress about, oh my gosh, I don't have time to read today about spinal cord injury.
Yeah. And like you brought it, most rehab programs are all going to get the basic understanding of rehab. Like every program's the same. You're going to have things you love about your program. You're going to have things you hate about your program, but it's residency. So it's not supposed to be fun per se. We had a good time, but like there was definitely times where we would shut the door and bitch out to each other, but that's just any kind of residency, right? You have to know who to complain to. Right. That is for sure. No, people make this mistake and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, do not complain to your program director unless something is really, really bad. Like complain amongst each other. Nobody wants to have a complainer, and be a good team player. Yeah. And
Northwestern's a big, class. So kind of find people that you mesh well with and kind of, can help support you through the 3 years that you will be together and beyond. Obviously, Benecia and I are still friends. We still talk to our other resident, Jason Miller. So you'll get really close with your co-residents.
Classmates, yeah. No, it's exciting. All right, let's ask you our final question. We ask everyone that is a guest on our show, if you were not going to be a rehab doctor, what would you be?
Oh, so
always a hard one.
My backup career is like a National Geographic photographer. I don't know if you've ever seen. There's actually this really funny picture because I was looking it up to show to someone where they like camouflage themselves, because they'll go for like months and months. They'll just like camp out to try to get the perfect shot. And they have this really funny picture of this guy dressed in like a panda suit in the jungle, like taking pictures of the panda. That would be my backup career, because I'm like super outdoorsy and I like art and photography, and
that'd be perfect.
That'd be fun.
Sheena can plan it. Sheena can plan your
any guest that wants to try, I'll plan it. That's funny. All right. Well, Thank you so much for joining us. This was super fun. Good luck with everything. You're going to do great. Like Benecia said, we are super excited to kind of see what's in store for you for your future. So
thank you for inviting me on. And if people have questions, feel free to reach out. I obviously am happy to talk about the field and how awesome it is. So
great.
How can they get in touch with you?
They can follow me on social media to look at my
yeah, plug it.
So natural, OOHSONATURAL. You could look up the shop docs. I also respond to all of those things. I'm on LinkedIn, Annette Grother. So any of those are great ways to reach me.
Awesome. So yeah, everyone's already following us, so you guys know it by now. The Virtual Physiatry Mentors. We had LSU take over last week. This week we have Case Western taking over on Tuesday. So it's been so much fun seeing what some programs have some really cool things, and I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. So and every time they like level each other up, which I also love. So yes, if you're interested in showing your program, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to have you. Next Sunday, we will have Dr. Catherine Dalton on, and she's going to be talking about another job opportunity, which people should definitely consider. It's very lucrative, which is locum tenens. So we look